Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Embodied Blonde Show. I am so excited to be here today with Katerina Barrie. Katerina Barrie is a psychic mentor for women. She is the founder of the Know Thyself Brand. She is known for her Folds Money Ritual experience that runs every season of the year and for her work coaching women in all areas of their lives. Katerina is a tarot master and an esoteric scholar. She walks the middle path, exploring everything that various forms of spirituality have to offer while staying true to her devotion to know thyself. She is also known for her passion for art and art modeling. She desires to help women find the courage to love themselves radically and unconditionally for their body, mind, emotions, and soul. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. So could you just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into the work that you do now?
Yeah, for sure. So I think my journey begins when I had this kind of spiritual awakening experience, and I didn't quite realize that that's what was happening to me. But it happened about 8 years ago. I'm about to turn 30, so I was 22 at the time, roughly, and I've had a lot of unfortunate events take place in my life back to back. To the point where I had to kind of start considering that I was maybe the common denominator. It seemed like I was kind of attracting that. And it got to the point where a few times I was, it was like very close encounters, accidents, falling down, getting into car crashes, things like that, where I was like, is this is this the end for me? And it felt so strange because I was so young, and yet I had this lack of real desire to really live. And I kind of had to realize that, and it was scary. And I think that's when I found out that the life that I was building for myself was very empty and really like devoid of meaning. And I wasn't really sure who I even was. And so that was the awakening. And I started digging deeper and looking into like the meaning of life. And that led me to start embracing my spirituality in a very different way from the way I considered it before. So I think this is where my journey really begins.
Wow. So did you have kind of like a spiritual background prior to this, or was this just like your first time diving into it when you kind of realized all this 8 years ago?
This is actually a good question, because I feel like a lot of times for a lot of us, spirituality is not something that we actively choose. In a lot of cases, you get introduced into the spirituality of your parents or the culture you were growing up in. And I grew up in Russia, and in a mixed family of my father being American, my mom being Russian. And the tradition there was Russian Orthodox for spirituality, the predominant spiritual belief system. And it's very similar to Catholicism in a way. It's very strict. And so I was kind of introduced into that from when I was baptized, basically. Wow. And so that background, it left a lot of heaviness, and it actually created some trauma for me as well that I had to work through. But at the time where I started this awakening journey, and things were kind of really going downhill to begin that process, I had to realize that I didn't have a relationship with spirituality anymore, because the only experience I had was religious, and it did not work for me. And so I had this kind of resistance to anything God or anything spiritual whatsoever. Yeah. And so I had to reconsider that completely, and dismantle what I was taught to and seek out other ways.
Yeah, I love that. I relate to that a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of us do.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. I've been following you for a long time, and I feel like I know you, even though this is our first time actually having a conversation. But I have been following your Folds Money Ritual and all your posts on that, but I would love to hear more about what that actually is.
Yeah. So similarly to my journey with spirituality, my journey with money was a very sad one
Yeah.
for a long time, just because and you know, some of our listeners might be into human design and some may not be, but kind of learning about my human design has been very eye-opening, because I do absorb a lot of other people's beliefs around me in general. And
You have like
so growing
a lot of open centers, or
Yeah,
when
I
you
will actually have a lot of defined centers, but one of the things that I recently come to like kind of dive into was the fact that my heart center is open, and that's a lot of that is like how I'm, you know, what I'm perceived to be capable of, or how I perceive myself has
yes.
been a lot of me taking, like, soaking up other people's perceptions like a sponge.
Yeah.
And so my journey, the journey that I chose, was to kind of try to play into it as much as possible, to get the validation, to feel loved, which is that kind of open heart center situation.
Yes.
um, and so a lot of the money beliefs I was growing up with were very negative, and I knew I wanted more. I've always had like big dreams. I never really wanted to limit how I wanted to experience life by money or not having it. But a lot of what I heard was like, no, you don't want to want money. Like, that's bad. You know, there's like, this is evil, you know, rich people are evil. A lot of religious beliefs mixed in with that. That it's the phrase that I heard in Russian, which is like me roughly translating it, but it's like, it's harder for a rich man to go to heaven than it is for an elephant to go through like a loop in a knitting needle. So that was the saying. Not sure if I got it, but it's like,
Mhm. Yeah.
as a child, I'm like, for an elephant to go through that little, what? Like, that's not that there is, yeah, it's very strange, you know. And so so with all of that, I remember very clearly being at an absolute breakdown, because I started a business about 6 years ago. I was trying to sell marketing and
Mhm.
like work with local businesses, and I couldn't charge anything for myself. I couldn't even charge $100, and it was absolutely devastating, and I couldn't figure out why. And I remember I was making this video that is not in public access, but I still have it. I can't even watch it, and I'm just crying, breaking down, saying like, I just can't do it. Like, I am just not worthy, I guess. And
Mhm.
I was like, where do I even start? So I had a lot of resistance to seeing money as something like a theme where you never win. And that's a lot of the stories that we still hear. Like, you have debt, you're already behind. You know, you have student loan debt, you're behind. You have house debt, you're behind.
Mhm.
You know, you have money, well, that's bad. You know, don't flaunt it, don't talk about it. It's like you just can't win. And so I thought, you know, for me, I tried learning about money in like traditional ways, and doing a lot of research and working with a lot of different mentors, and a lot of that was great. But I was like, for me, the biggest missing piece is like, for me, for it to matter, it has to be spiritual.
Yeah.
And with that realization, I was like, I have to find a way where money fits in with the spiritual world. Like, what's the spiritual meaning of it? And going on that journey, and already practicing ritual work and already practicing psychic work, I decided to combine the two. And I did it for me at first. And then having a conversation with a mentor, it was like, why don't you share it with the world? Don't you feel like you're like keeping it away from everyone? Because this is very interesting. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I'm ready. And then I thought, we'll figure it out together. I'm never going to be ready. It's something that we're going to do
Yeah.
together. And so I've been running it for a year. It's an immersive experience.
Mhm.
And it's not something I can talk about it forever, because there's so many elements of it. But it's like, it's something that one has to experience, just experiencing money in a different way, in relationship to yourself, and learning to look at it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
And really, this is what Folds is really about.
Oh, wow. That sounds so amazing. And are you running you're running one right now, right? You're
Yeah,
enrolling.
so they run consecutively. I started a year ago, so it's been it's been running back to back nonstop pretty much for an entire year.
Mhm.
And so I open a new round, a new edition every season. So we go for 3 months at a time.
Mhm.
So every season, like right now, starting summer, right now the doors are open to join, and then they close on like June 20th, and then we go through the end of October, and then doors open again in September, and there's a period of time to join. And once again, so it runs 3 months at a time, but it never ends. And the process that I teach there, like this method of looking at money differently,
Yeah.
I realized like I have to be the embodiment of it. If I'm going to lead this nonstop all the time,
Yeah.
this has to be part of my life, like unconditionally. And so, this is where like real magic started happening, because I realized like I can be very emotional or down, or I can be super elated and very excited. But if I just show up for money, I can trust like in my nervous system that just the same way it's always showing up for me, whether I see it or not. So it's a never ending process on my end, but for everyone else who wants to participate, it's a 3 month at a time experience.
And are there like calls with Q&A, or what do you get? What happens once you get inside? Like not the information, but like what's the structure like?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the structure is very kind of like hybrid. There's just a lot of different layers to experience this. On a individual layer, there's a process that everyone's encouraged to follow, on the daily or whenever it feels good for them.
Mhm.
But there are several programs that can be accessed at any time. So it's like watch on your own time. It's a whole library, and I'm constantly adding to it. There are live calls where I basically like create a transmission. So I basically talk or teach on something or share an experience. And then there's like some hot seat Q&A opportunities there if someone's live and they have a question that they want me to talk on. And then there's also once a month, we do a group coaching call. So that's 3 per experience because it runs for 3 months. And basically whoever like is available to jump in and talk a little bit about themselves and introduce themselves and then ask some questions gets this opportunity to speak to me in real time and do this. We do this as a group as well. So, but in addition to that, there's like a lot of other little components. I do a psychic reading for everyone who joins that experience. It's not kind of full private coaching version of it, but it's like a little message. So there's a little bit of something esoteric to work with as well. We have some healing ceremonies there. I am a medicine woman. I sit with ayahuasca. That's been my journey for 5 years now. So I take some of these ceremony traditions and I bring it into the folds. So it's some energy work around money as well. And generally it's like a community. So there's like this rolling chat that everyone is always welcome to pop in, celebrate. Money can be a taboo topic at like the dinner table with the family or coworkers or whoever it is. So it's a safe space to pop in and just celebrate something or to ask a question or maybe even bring up like I'm having an issue, you guys, like I'm not feeling in alignment with money because this is what's happening. Can you give me any input on this? So it's a perfect spot for that. And something else that I've added after running folds for an entire year is this new mastermind. So folds is a contribution-based experience. Basically, you pay what you decide. That's up to the contributor. I'm sticking with this model. It's been so incredibly transformational for me. I love it. It's such a perfect balance of self-leadership and also just freedom of like, okay, this is what I'm in with. This is what I'm putting into this game. This is what I'm choosing to play with here, right?
Yeah.
But the mastermind, it's for contributions $100 and above. And again, it runs the entirety of the experience. So in that mastermind, it's on Voxer. We get to dive in a little bit more into the coaching aspect. And there's a little bit more like unfiltered behind the scenes, next level conversations that maybe not everyone would be ready for. But for those that are like, I want to be in this room and I really want to like talk money and off, like no topic off limits, that's the space for that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's so incredible, Katerina. Like
Thank you.
I love that. I feel like it's so different than what everybody else is doing. It's like you really just channeled your own thing and it's going amazing.
Yeah, on that note, so being, again, kind of circling back to that human design thing, where open heart, it's been incredibly, almost like impossible for me to commit to pretty much anything like long term in my business. Like I would be like, oh, I'm doing this now, and then I would be like, no, and or this, and no, and it's so it would like work for a little while, and then I would just kind of lose interest. And it was such a me problem, like a problem I had with myself, where it's like, what is missing? Like, why can't I create a body of work? Why can't I pour like all of myself into a direction? So that was a journey for me for a while. And I couldn't find it. And then so I like to say this about the folds, because it was like there were foundational pieces that I didn't even notice were being put in place, from learning from mentors, from doing one-on-ones with mentors, with clients, from like all these little pieces. And I never knew it would be money, because it's like the thing I struggled with the most in my whole entire life. That's what I believed. Wow. And then when this thing came through, and it was like, it just fell into place, and it was like in my body, I knew like, this is life-changing for me. Like as soon as I saw what it was, I was like, I am doing this. I am doing this. Yeah. And I think it was this commitment to myself, like this, I believe in this so much that I want to do this forever. I think that translated into like, okay, I can actually commit to this body of work for others as well. But it never happened prior to the folds. So I would say this is like the thing for me. And I'm sure later down in my journey, there will be other creations like this, but it's like right now, like there has never been anything like this, and nothing like this in the sense of like my commitment, because I live it all the time.
So I've been learning about, I also have an open heart, and our open heart center, and I've been learning about that as well. And what I realize is I've been able to be really consistent in my business for the first time also, but it's because I'm like in love with it. I'm so passionate about it. And before, when I was trying to like make it work and to force myself to show up every day, I couldn't, because it just was even so ever so slightly out of alignment with what my soul really wanted to talk about. And now that I've just given myself full permission to show up with whatever I have, whatever is coming through, it's like, I can't stop. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's always like, and I keep saying, and it's so interesting, because I've learned from so many different mentors in terms of like the launch strategy, like how do you, and I've run offers before, I've offered private coaching, readings, I've offered like a variety of different types of offers, and I've sold. I still work in person, like sales. I sell art for my mother's business full time as well, which is like in-person job pretty much, and it's actually one of the biggest blessings, because it alleviated so much pressure from my business when I decided that I can handle, in fact, 2 full-time commitments. It's been so life-changing, but I enjoy sales. I enjoy talking to people, selling to them in person, online, but it's like the sales cycle, how long do you sell it for? Like some people say, oh, you can have multiple offers at the same time, maybe just one. But for me, like with the folds, it's also become this one thing that, like, unlike anything else, I can talk about it for the longest time. Like my current launch cycle for this is like about 2 months. So I start talking about it before the doors even open. And then like right now, before June 20th, I'm like talking about it every day. And it's always like this question, like when you're so in love with something and you like live it and you believe it so much, there is an endless like amount of ways that you can talk about the same thing. Yeah, but it's never going to sound the same. But it's like, if that thing is not something you're excited about, there might be a million ways to talk about it and you don't even care. You just don't even want to. So it's a good, so it's like the passion, I think, is the main aspect. And I think this, back to kind of your question, which is, I think this is where this kind of channeled creation comes from, because with the folds, the vision was so clear, it never even crossed my mind to wonder, it's like, is it going to be a course? Is it going to be this? Is it like, what box do I fit it in? Or how long should I promote it for? It's like, these questions don't even exist. It's like, I'm being basically guided by the existence of this container.
It's like being birthed through you rather than like you going out and trying to mentally create something.
For sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And I do try, like, because I've done with other things, I've tried to figure it out or force it. And like, I do have a healthy, or sometimes maybe a little too much, like, of this masculine energy where it's like, get it done. And I like pretty direct. So like, I feel like I want that control sometimes, but it's funny how like through that approach, you can do so much and you get like this much farther ahead. It doesn't even, it's like, why? and then something that is aligned, something that is like, I'm a match for this is a match for me, I'm here to do this work. You know, sometimes I lean back and that's when the most people come in and I'm like, I was sleeping, you know, so it's like the less I try to control it, the more it takes off.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. So I am so inspired by the way you immerse yourself and show up for personal development. How has this impacted your life and business?
So this is a very interesting question, because just the spiritual aspect of this work really saved my life. I'm going to say this, you know, when I was talking about this awakening starting to happen, and then for a while longer, while I was struggling with these ideas and concepts that I kind of grew into, and becoming really an adult, and trying to decide, like, what do I choose to believe for myself? Going back, like, I started working with cards. I started working with tarot and learning about it. And I didn't talk about it to anyone else. I didn't advertise it and, you know, publish it on social media necessarily, but I would go to it and I would read for myself. Like I would go do this for hours, because quite honestly, I couldn't stand thinking about other things. Everything else was a mess. And so when I had this opportunity to just like dissolve into a process and really kind of geek out and study and learn and work at it, and like kind of try to understand what this process is, it gave me this like perspective, like what I'm seeing around me isn't the only reality that's available. That's not the only read on what's going on. And so it gave me this like, oh, this is the meaning of life. For me, at least, it was like, there is a mystery. There is something more to it. There is a way to see things that is not so simple. And it gives this like room for imagination to come back, something we all have in abundance as children, which is like, oh, I can dream. Wait a minute. I'm not just whatever is going on in my life. I can be so much more. And so as you know, this work continued to develop during the pandemic, on my end, I was, you know, continuing to dive into it, but I was still pretty silent about it. But during the pandemic, I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing this professionally, or at least try. And so I started going live and pulling cards, and some people were shocked. Some people have seen me secretly like doing this in coffee shops. So they were like, okay, well, whatever, this is interesting, you know, I'll check it out. A lot of people I knew were not from the online space. They were local friends that I had in my little town where I lived at the time. And it took off more than my marketing business that I couldn't even charge $100. I actually said, my first time offering readings, I said, you know, just I accept donations. Mm-hmm. And it was like the generosity of people blew me away. I was like, why, what, like this could be my business. Like, and this is the one thing I actually care about. So combining business and spirituality has always been a journey in kind of this expression of what I do. And the way that it also was something that taught me the hard way, because I was connecting like my spiritual abilities to work with people on the psychic level to my mainstream of income for a while. And I got burnt out like right off the get-go, very quickly, very fast. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, there's a lot and I can't handle it. Like, I just don't have the capacity. So over this journey, the biggest impact that took place in my business, or that happened to my business has been boundaries, spiritual, energetic boundaries. And this is actually something that I feel like I really mastered with the folds ritual, because the first time I had like 50 people join, the second time was like 90, and the numbers have varied, but it was like a lot of people. And I thought to myself, I can't carry that on me. Like, I cannot be the one person carrying all these people as myself, like in this kind of ritual setting. So I had to evolve past it. I had to work with some mentors to like find out how to manage this energy. And I actually set something up, which is this kind of energetic grid concept. So not only do I not carry the entire folds money ritual in me, but I'm actually carried by it. Like, I am held, and so is everyone else that comes in. So I think to answer, maybe that's not quite the answer you were going for, but I think the biggest impact of combining this kind of spiritual aspect and the business aspect has been creating these structures, even on energetic levels, that support me as well as everyone else, and drawing this line where it's like, I'm not going to control the whole thing. I'm not going to carry everyone on me. I'm going to be held just as well as everyone else. So I think this, because I think without that, it couldn't have continued evolving, and I couldn't continue offering it if this wasn't in place.
Oh my gosh, it's a way better answer than what I could have ever imagined. It's perfect.
Thank you.
So you had this post where you were talking about kind of the behind the scenes of what it actually takes to create and sustain a business. And you have two businesses, and you're not afraid to talk about working hard. You prioritize luxury. And I was just so inspired by that, because I absolutely I am helping women to run their business from a more feminine place, but that doesn't mean that we don't work. Do you know what I mean? And there is a phase in your business where you do need the hustle. And there's so many people talking about like healing hustle culture. And I love that, but it doesn't mean that we don't work hard, or that we don't like take actual steps to move our businesses forward. Could you share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and this was an interesting kind of energetic transition, because when I started the psychic version of my business, like I said, during the pandemic, I was like, okay, I'm not selling marketing to small businesses that I can't even bring myself to charge for. I'm just gonna pursue what I actually care about. So let's give this a shot. I actually, at that time, shortly after I kind of made that transition, I got married, and I have since divorced. So it's been a journey, but I want to credit my ex-husband, because he supported us financially, and it really gave me the opportunity to give this business like a rise, to like really focus on it and not have the pressure to actually pay the bills. So it wasn't like an expectation that I would be making a certain amount. So I'm very grateful for that. We actually happened to remain really good friends, although it did take a little bit of work, but I'm really proud of that. But I remember I was having like flashback like stories from 2 years ago, and I'm sitting there, my husband's paying for everything, basically. I'm building this business, and like no judgment whatsoever. It was so beautiful at the time. Yeah. and I'm, posting about like lean back, take a bath, rose petals. Like, that's how I receive cash. And, and it still happens that way. Like, I'll have payments come through in my sleep or in the bathtub. It's like, it's so fun. It's amazing. But it's like, I cannot sustain myself that way. That is like, no way. So if I was still married and my husband was still paying the bills, that might have still been like how I approached, because it's like, that's what I'm living. But I had to realize like, this marriage isn't right for me. This location where my ex-husband wanted to spend the rest of his life, I'm like, I cannot live here. I do not want to die here. This is not the place. And so I had to get out, and I and really just being realistic, I was like, if I get out, I'm going to have to work. And I don't just mean my business. Like I can't, I cannot, if I'm struggling and like, don't have food, or I don't have gas, and I'm like going selling like psychic services, there is absolutely no way I can do this. It just feels so wrong. I cannot, because it's like my energy is like begging for money, and there is no value. I would not buy from a person like that myself. You know, I hate to say it, I'd rather like give them my money, like a donation, like here you go, you know, you're struggling, versus like buy something from them, because that energy is like, oh, it's repelling.
Yeah.
And so I was like, if I leave, I'm going to have to work. There's no other way. And so thankfully, I had this incredible opportunity I've worked with my mom for years on and off here and there, like summertime. But she said, if you want to do this like full time, I do have a place, like I do have an opening for you. And so I'm very grateful for that. And it's amazing actually, because what I learned from working in her business has had such an impact on my online business. So her business is setting up shop at a touristy spot in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. And it's, the city market, the historic market, has been around since 1800s. And you basically build the whole shop, you sell all day, you break it down. Some days there's like an additional few hours as well in the nighttime. So it is hard work. It's outdoors. The weather gets super hot, gets cold in the winter. It's always outside. And just at first I had resistance, because I'm like, well, it was nice sitting at home and just like working on my business. But like now, but it took a little bit of a learning curve, and I figured out like a way to do it very efficiently, like all the setup and everything else. So I feel comfortable in that routine. But then I had to really show up. Like, you have to go and actually open shop. And that got me thinking, because I was like, I think a lot in my business about, in my online business, I think a lot about offers. I think a lot about selling. I think a lot about posting. But sometimes when I think about it, absolutely nothing gets done, because I'm like, oh, I thought about it, I'll do it some other day. If I thought about opening a shop to sell art, and I just thought about it, we would sell zero art that day, because the shop isn't open.
That's very true.
Oh my God. And then, that it was like such a blatant, like kind of hard knocks type style, school of hard knocks realization, where it's like, if you just think about it, and if you don't open it, no one can buy anything. And I realized it translates into the online world. If you don't sell, there is no way that anyone can buy. And maybe they will reach out and ask you, but the chances are so slim. And a lot of people don't feel comfortable doing that either, just like reaching out. They don't even know what it is. So, I think leaning back is something that can be done if your business is like a passion, or it's like a side project, and you really just do it when you feel like it, and everything else is set up, and it's a luxury. It's basically like, I do it when I feel like it, I do it when it feels good. But if there's any chance of you actually creating a business that with time becomes something that supports you, I think especially in the beginning, you got to realize like it's not very much different from brick and mortar. It's not very much different from like opening shop and selling stuff in person, because if you don't open it, no one can buy anything. So you got to show up and sell, sometimes even more, I think, online, because a shop someone can walk into. Online, if you're not showing up, it's kind of hard to show up on other people's feeds, whatever platform it is,
It's so true. I've been a massage therapist for 12 years, but I went out on my own 5 years ago, and I showed up every single day, no matter what. And it didn't matter if I had clients, I would massage people for free, just in exchange for if they would write a review for me. And I worked my butt off. And now I have a very, very successful practice. Like, now I am like leaned back, and people come to me, and I have this reputation, and it's beautiful. But I had this very limiting belief that was like, well, I know how to build a brick and mortar business, but I don't know how to build an online business. And I just kind of realized, like, no, you do know how. It's literally the same thing.
It's not that different.
You have to show up every single day. Yes, you're not showing up to a physical space, you're showing up online, but like, it's not very different.
No. And I think this, well, and leaning back, like this is something I've been discussing with one of my mentors recently, and it's building up to actually the program that I'm going to do in this round of folds. Every round of folds, I release a new program. So it's like, this is what really builds that library of content that's available there. And this, in this round, I really want to talk about like unconditional money, unconditional level of relationship, because it's very achievable. And it's not really so much about the masculine, feminine energetics, but what is, I will tell you, in my experience, masculine energetics is a little more sales. Like you, like the receiving of the sale, when the client buys from you and you get that money deposited, and or you see a notification, that is the feminine energy. That is receiving. You can't do that on behalf of your client. You can't make a purchase from yourself on behalf of your client. Like that's not, so there is no doing in that. It's them doing and you're receiving. But so there is that dynamic there where receiving is when you get paid, but you don't get paid unless someone knows that something is for sale. And I think the more you lean back is actually the more people already know. They'll like come to you and be like, hey, Sarah, I know about you run this, someone told me I saw this, but there was something built, they know from somewhere. And I think a lot of women actually are drawn to the path of entrepreneurship because they're like, I want to lean back, I want that. And it's like, I want this sales coming in. I want this experience. I'm playing with my kids and, boom, notification, someone just paid me. That's amazing. But I think what gets lost in the industry talk, so to speak, is the fact that like, you got to build to that place, and you don't disqualify yourself from like, oh, I'm not cut out for this if it's your third month and you're not able to like lean back and have people coming in because no one knows about you yet, Yeah. So I think it's very, and it's another thing I was thinking, I enjoy the aspect of working for my mother where like it's a job because I only sell, I don't paint, I'm not the artist, I don't paint these paintings, I don't really manage the inventory. I show up and I sell and, open, break down, whatever, take notes. But when it comes to my business, like I wear all the hats, really I'm the only one. And I think this also gets lost because it's like, do you want to do 10 different jobs? Do you want, and are you willing to invest and maybe not have profit right away because there is a learning curve? So these are important considerations because I think what can be created is this more feminine energy based, more receiving type of business. But it will take probably some time to build up to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And until you're able to invest in the people to do the stuff you don't want to do. Like for me, that's like my bookkeeper, when I did my first summit, I hired an online business manager, things that like, I know I'm not good at tech. I know I'm not good with numbers, so I need help. But there was a time in my business, in my original business, where I couldn't afford to hire those people. So you really are doing everything.
Yes. And sometimes, and I think it's interesting because in this round of folds, I hired the graphic designer. Her name is Michelle Lynn. She's incredible. It wasn't even, she didn't even position herself as a graphic designer. She was just sharing her art. And I said, that's it. Like, this is did she do this? I saw the images. I'm like, is she creating them? And then she's like, yeah, this is the images I created. I'm like, you're the one. I want you to do this for me. And we're like figuring it out because I don't think she has worked on like a program kind of package where it's like different types of graphics for different types of content in the same theme. But it was so clear. And I was like, I don't care what my first thought was, like, I don't care what she charges. I'll find a way because like, this is the one, this is it. Like, this is what I want to see my program be visually represented as. But I've created graphics forever. Like I will create graphics. I will write copy. I will do the structures, even though I'm not good at tech, I have this rule, as long as, sorry about that. As long as I can do it from my phone, I'll do it. If I can do it from my phone, I'll do it. And I even create sales pages on my phone.
I love that so much. Oh, so I'm sure that once you get into the folds, this is exactly what you teach, is healing your relationship with money. Can you give us like a little hint or just like one little tip for women who are trying to heal their relationship with money?
Yeah, I think the fact that we perceive the relationship with money the way it's been taught is like one of the biggest problems. And it's not even like all the bad ways or all the good ways. It's like, it's not ours. Somehow it feels like it's just not yours. And the one of the things that we focus on the most, I think, is like, how much do we actually make? And a lot of times that is like a maze, because you're like, okay, here's how much I make, here's how much I want to make, and here's what I do to make that, and then I have to do this, and then so it's like it's such a hypothetical journey that if that's kind of how you approach like seeing yourself have a different relationship with money, it leads to, well, when I make more, or when I pay, when I spend less. And there is really no way to experience a shift in the now, because it's like so far, well, I'll have to cut this out, and that's a difficult conversation, or I'll have to have all these other streams, and it's also not now. And so what I teach in the folds, which is like such a huge shift for me personally, is starting to look at all the other ways in which money is present in your life. And I'm going to share one, just kind of an example, which is kind of wild. And I wrote a post about that too, but it's just, and it demonstrates just how many things we overlook. So I had a call with a mentor yesterday, and I actually happened to have a call with her 2 years ago, almost like exactly on the same date. And at the time, I was just getting started with the psychic side of my business, with the coaching side of my business. And it was a lot of money. She charged $888 for 30 minutes. And I already bought something else. So I had like partial credit. So I paid the difference. I was like, what is the cheapest? She said 30 minutes, 888. And I said, okay. And I asked her all the questions. And it was like, I got so much from it. And it carried me for quite a long time. Well, I happened to get another opportunity to speak with her yesterday. And I didn't have to buy the call. It was like a bonus attached to something else I purchased from her a while ago. It's just like a free bonus call. Yeah. And we're talking, and I made a note to ask her that, because being part of the folds, doing this work myself, it's so important to pay attention to all kinds of money. So at the very end, I tell her, like, so how much do you charge for this? And she said, oh, I don't even sell these anymore. I don't sell 30 minutes anymore. I'll sell an hour though. If someone just wants one session, it's going to be an hour. And I said, well, how much for that? She said $6,000. And I'm like, okay, so I just got a $3,000 call with you. She said, yeah, technically, even though it's not for sale, but yeah, that would be it. And that is something that I would count. Like, that is something that I didn't pay for. That is something that I didn't have to like ask for. It was just given. And if I didn't ask, I wouldn't even know. I'd be like, oh, nice, extra call. Well, that's fun. That was fun. But because I'm constantly questioning, like, what are all the ways in which money is going through me, I'm hyper aware of these blessings that are so easy to just overlook, because it's like, well, I didn't get paid $3,000. I didn't get $3,000 cash, and so we can like really warp it where it's like, well, it's not in my bank account. And so a lot of things we just disregard. So I think for women, I would say, if this work speaks to you, Folds is a powerful place to learn about this. But if you just kind of want to play with it yourself, I would say start paying attention. Just forget about what you get paid. Forget about how much you make we already know that. You already know how much you make. Start paying attention to other ways, gifts, discounts. Someone gave you something, ask them, like, if I had to pay for this, how much do you think this would be? I have never had a person not tell me. They'll tell you, but it's you making that count and realizing, like, I'm that abundant. Like, I actually have all of this happening. Maybe it's not in my bank account, but it's because I am. This money is circulating, So I'll like wrap up this answer with, if you look at the word currency, which is what's on my background here visually, dollar bills, like, so actual like currency, if we look at that word, it's current, like an electrical current, like a river running. It's a current, and it's also frequency. So it's like something that is energetic, vibrational. So we combine these two words together, we have currency. Money is always moving. It's always circulating. It's always running through. So it's not how much we keep or how much we make. In order to really build a relationship with it, it's how does it run through us, and becoming aware of that.
Wow. I've never heard anyone explain it like that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That I tend to discount. I tend to be like, oh, but I didn't earn it, so it doesn't count.
And that creates a lot of stories where like it's like we have to be good enough for money. And and in the way that we've been taught to qualify that is like, do you make enough to be considered good enough? And then also when we start a business, it translates into, am I good enough to charge that or charge anything at all? So this good enough component, it's very conditional. It's like, according to whom, according to what?
Yeah.
But the unconditional relationship with money is like, I can feel like crap and I'm still showing up, and I'm still paying attention. I'm still like tapping into like, how is it? Okay, this is the discount. Okay, I felt like crap today, but I still got a $3 discount at McDonald's. I wrote down $4.29. I pay attention. Like, I was at McDonald's the other day. I ordered whatever sandwich and chicken nuggets, and it was like $4.29 saved. And I'm like, well, I'm going to write that down. It's like all the ways, because it's like $3,000, $4.29, like, do you just count the big numbers, or you count everything? Like, you pay attention to everything that you're a match for, especially the things you didn't have to pay for, and they just came into your life. There's a lot of that happens, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness. So could you tell us a little bit more what your experience has been like with contribution-based pricing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good topic. So I've realized, kind of actually looking through some of the questions you were going to ask me preparing for this interview a little bit today, I realized that I actually started with contribution based. I think it's always been part of my path, because when I first was reading tarot in this kind of awakening period, and I was very private about it, I would, maybe quietly do it at a coffee shop. A few times I had people approach me and they were like, can you do a reading for me? And a few times I said yes, and it was so draining. And then another spiritual practitioner said to me, like, don't do that. You're paying for it twice yourself. You're doing the reading and then you didn't receive anything from that exchange. There is no balance. There is no giving, receiving balance. You just gave and then you didn't get paid. So it's like, this is dangerous. And I felt that, and I was like, okay. So what felt good at the beginning was like, I would tell people like, I can do a reading for you, but you have to either buy me like a coffee or like a little treat. You have to buy me something from this coffee shop. So I let them support the business I was in on my behalf. That's as far as I could go at first. But then, during when pandemic was breaking out, I started going live and pulling cards, and I would ask people for like a donation. Mm-hmm. And then I came up with some pricing, but the donations for readings no longer felt good. Mm-hmm. But there was something about that exchange that like really always spoke to me, where it was like, for a person to say, okay, I want to be part of this, but then, it's like spotlights on you, like you decide what you pay. I feel like that's almost like an extra barrier for someone who's not meant to be there to like not come in. I know it sounds pretty counterintuitive, but it's like when you have to decide that you want to be part of something, and then you have to decide what you're going to pay. Mm-hmm. There is such autonomy in that, where it's like there is no expectation, which creates almost like a little more pressure on like, well, what do I decide? How do I enter this? Mm-hmm. How do I put some skin in the game, like on my own terms? And so I think it like that was a perfect combination for people who like want to work on money, because it's like, there is no excuse. Like, I can't afford it. This is the price. It's like, there is no price. You decide. There is it's going to be something, but it's in your hands. And I think another piece of the success of the contribution-based pricing for the folds specifically is that there's this premise. So this whole ritual, this whole experience is based around this phrase, which is, your contribution shall return to you tenfold. Okay. And this is very interesting. It has some mystical elements to it. It's not easy to understand, and it wasn't designed to be easily understood. It's such a core piece of the whole process. But tenfold is an interesting concept. It's referred a lot to in the Bible, in other spiritual texts, and it's always referred to in significant ways, where if it just meant 10x, it like wouldn't make much sense. It's like you can say many times more, and it have more weight to it. Because so the tenfold, I always wonder, like, what does that even mean? And I watched, I remember I was watching one of the programs by one of my mentors, and there was this, she told the story of like, what would you rather have, $1 million today or a penny doubled every day for a whole year? And it's natural for people to say, oh, $1 million, obviously, like a penny, what do you mean? But if you really watch that, and the penny doubled becomes 2 pennies doubled, becomes 4 pennies doubled, and next thing you know, you're halfway through the year and it's way over. Once it crosses 1 million, you realize it's going to be doubled every single day. So the numbers become astronomical. So I think that's when it landed for me, like combination of this contemplation and hearing the story. I was like, that's what tenfold must mean. It must mean the amount is doubled every single time, 10 times.
It means exponential, not necessarily times 10.
Yes, exactly. Exponential, which this concept of doubled, like folded, like you have something and then you fold it. No, it's like you have 2 and then you fold it again. Now you have 4, So it's like, so that's why I called it the folds. And this is what came through, which was my own. I put my own contribution into this ritual as well. Like, I am a participant on par with everyone else. And so I thought, what if this is what I believed? What if this was the principle that I set the folds around? And so we watch. What we do is we observe all this money coming in, and our belief is like, okay, I put in $10. $10 tenfold is like, I think it's like 1,000, something 1,020 or $1,200 tenfold. So you watch that like evolve. You watch that. And you're counting all the money at the same time. So there is, I think, in terms of the contribution, I think what makes it different is that when someone's coming into this ritual, they know it's not just an amount. It's not just an arbitrary number. It's not just whatever. It's like something that they're going to be working with. They're going to see this number grow, and they're going to be excited because it's like, this is what I put in, and I'm just going to watch it until it becomes this number in my life. And there is no pressure. It's not like it's going to happen like in 5 days. It's like, you're going to watch it until it happens completely. So there's no end point. So it's like, I feel like it's a stake in the experience. Yeah. And I've heard some alternative perspectives on contribution-based. I think the intention with which you create something that's contribution-based can affect it very much. For me, when someone comes into the folds, it's a celebration. Like, it doesn't matter what they contributed. But then again, I don't need their contribution to pay my bills. So I'm not attached to it. And then it's not like private coaching where it's like, I'll do this work. It's going to be intense, but this is the price. And if you don't pay it, I'm not doing it.
I mean, you spend time in it, but it's not like each person is 1 hour of your time or 10 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's also like it's helpful if it was something that I did just for the clients. And it's like, okay, I know this, I got this, but you need it from me. And okay, here I go. But it's like I live it. So it's like already part of my life. I'm already doing it. So just being able to share it with as many people as are aligned to be part of it feels really good. But it's also like I find that a lot of people in the folds, they do it over and over again. It becomes part of their lifestyle in a sense, because it's like, yeah, for me, a relationship with money is unconditional. It's something I want to work on all the time because it's important. And I think this also is like that level of like allowing yourself to accept that money is important to you. And it is, because it's, you have to pay for things in order to survive. Maybe not completely survive, but in order to have a life that has the elements that you desire to experience. So it is important, but it's like it's important enough where it's my priority to work on it all the time. Yeah.
I love that. I love it so much.
Thank you.
This is so fun.
Yes.
So with your psychic abilities, when did you know you had psychic abilities? Was it like from childhood, or was it something you discovered later? And then how has that strengthened over time?
So I knew, I couldn't really quite explain it. And when I tried to ask questions around it, it was that religious environment, which I got some really scary feedback about it. So I would say borderline traumatizing, where it's like, if you keep talking about this, you're going to hell. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. But it wasn't like that in my family. It wasn't my parents. It was just that kind of church upbringing. But I think I didn't have the right words for it, but I had abilities when I was very little. And even like starting with like not having the concept of death, where it's like, I was like, why are people so afraid of dying? And I remember my grandma telling me, because that's the end. And I'm like, no, it's not. And she's like, it is, for like you die and then that's it. And I'm like, it's not it. Like, I've been there, I'm back, like you can come back. And that's definitely not the religious teaching that was common in that. And she was like, no, you don't know, just don't talk about it, you're too little, let's like stop this conversation. But I never had like the fear of death. I do have mediumship abilities, which is being able to get in touch with the spirits of those who have crossed over. I don't advertise that professionally. I don't practice it professionally. It's enough as is just to have it. It's a little too much, but I've had these encounters. I had like my grandfather passed away, and I like had to make myself cry because I was like, I don't want to be a weird human being. Everyone's sad, everyone's crying, so I got to make myself upset, because to me, like, nothing really happened other than he's just not here as a human anymore. It was a very weird thing to navigate as a child. And I was recently kind of remembering too, like just playing games, like Barbie dolls and all that. I would practice rituals. I would have like, I think like my grandma would think I'm making like soups or like pretend cooking, but I wasn't cooking. I was like combining different elements. And I had these like in my imagination, it was like spell work. And now looking back, I'm like, this is really potent. No one taught me this. No one talked about this. It was something that just came as who I already was as a soul, I think. And it was just kind of trying to find a way out. So being very empathic, being able to read people's mind, being able to feel people's emotions as them almost, it made me very weird as a child, like antisocial. I wasn't really sure. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And a few times I did, and it would like freak me out. I'd be like, why do I have to be like this? And so so my journey was like, I tried to become as normal as possible. I was like, I want to succeed in life. I don't want to be like a weirdo. I don't want to be, lost. I want success. I want to build a life that feels good. That's successful. but I started going about it in a way that was like, be as little me as possible. And so when these events started taking place in my early 20s, this dark night of the soul, this awakening where everything was falling apart and everything was fake, like things fell apart. I wasn't even sad. I'm like, well, that didn't matter and that didn't matter. And then I'm like, well, who am I? And I'm like, that doesn't even matter either. And it was just like, who am I? And I realized that I've become like a shell of myself. Like I've blocked off all of these abilities. And I was trying to be I was so desperately trying to be normal and liked and people pleasing that there was almost nothing left of myself. So that's why I was kind of self-sabotaging to the point of like, is this done? Am I done here? And I haven't even started. And so this kind of journey of like reconnecting with spirituality, it brought out these abilities. And I will say that although I didn't have much support, I had a few mentors that really held space for me. It was solitary in most part. There was some support, but I would say like one thing, if I could somehow have had more support as these abilities started kicking back in, that would probably be very nice. Because it for women, especially with religious trauma, especially with societal conditioning trauma around their psychic abilities, the scariest part is when you ask these abilities to come back. You're like, okay, all right, let's see what I actually really am. And they all come back and it scares you. Like your own gifts scare you. I think that's the most alarming, because it's like, I can't even trust that. But that's the one thing you can always trust. So bridging this and grounding these gifts when they reawaken, especially if they've been shut down since childhood, I think this is the place where it would really be nice to have more support for women going through this period.
Absolutely. That's so important. I feel like, especially too, if you have had trauma, we can become so disembodied. And then when we do have our psychic gifts come back, if there's no embodiment and there's no grounding, you can get into some really scary places. Like you do have to have a connection to your body, I think, to be able to hold those abilities.
And you know what, I was having a conversation with one of my private clients recently where it's like strong emotions, psychic abilities are something that is like electricity. It's something you have to conduct through your nervous system, meaning it's not something you have to hold on to, but your nervous system has to be able to withstand the intensity of that current that like literally runs like electricity. And I didn't have that capacity. So going through this awakening and having all these like fires burn, Phoenix rising moment, like everything's burned down to the ground. Now I'm like, okay, here I come. Here's my, psychic gifts. And like all of that kind of opening like floodgates. I remember I was going through the craziest times. I would drink a lot. Like I practically became a functioning alcoholic at the time. I would drink all the time. I remember I would not be able to sleep and I had all these visions and things. And I'd be like, okay, I'll go to this bar. And this bar was open until like 5 a.m. in the morning. And it's a small town, so everyone kind of knows each other. But I would go there and I would sit there and I would get drunk. And then because I have no limits, alcohol removes this thing that you're trying to kind of suppress, like your normalcy, right? So I would drink on top of that and I would go and oh my gosh, I would do unsolicited channeling for other drunk people at the bar. It was like, there are people that still remember. There are some people that like I'm still connected with that have seen this happen. One of them has been in the previous round of Folds. I was like, I can't believe you're joining. She was like a bartender there. I was like, I can't believe you're joining this. She's like, yeah. I'm like, you've seen so much. She's like, I know, like, I love you. I just want to be part of it. I was like, this is so crazy. But the shocking part was like the channeling was powerful. No one asked for it. No one paid for it. No one wanted it. But it would I'd be like going off on this guy, for example, who's also like drunk and maybe he just tried to hit on me and I'm like channeling for him. And he's like breaking out in tears because it's like very intense personal information. I can't remember what I just said. He's like, crying. It's all happening in the bar. Like, that was the life. And I remember I talked to one of my friends who was a psychic as well, who a really good friend that had some really important words of guidance for me at the time that I'm grateful for. She's like, I see you do this. She's like, there's a healthier and she's like, there are people that you don't have to like assault with your psychic. They will actually like pay you for it. And I'm like, no way. Like, oh my gosh. And it was a couple years like that. It wasn't like, oh, that was one crazy weekend. Like, I lived a very unhealthy life, and I could not get a handle on these gifts, and I could not get any normalcy in life. But I'll add a little note here too. Going back to kind of human design, I do have a type. My profile is 4/6. So a lot of people that I'm learning with the 6, we don't really get very grounded into ourselves until our 30s. Yeah. So that's where I'm entering right now. So hopefully it'll a little bit more tethered to the core, but so everyone's journey is different, and sometimes I'm grateful for they make for fun stories, but thankfully I didn't get into too much trouble. But I'm grateful for these experiences, because in contrast, having a handle on my gifts and giving myself the space to take care of myself, and also sharing them responsibly with others, with permission, with exchange, it's such a gift. But not having that wild experience of just like really like wildfire out of control, I don't think I would be able to appreciate just how good it can actually get. So
amazing. Yeah, I think that was probably a time of really profound growth for you. Sometimes there's alcohol involved.
And alcohol has been used in some, like, as a sacrament. So there are some shamans in different parts of the world that use alcohol as sacrament. Very rarely, but it does happen.
In the Bible, wine is the sacrament.
Exactly. And of course, the religious sacrament as well. So it does, like, and again, but it's very different. Here's something, and this is like very fringe, but I'll share it here. At the time, when I was going on these crazy night adventures, unsolicited channeling, as I like to call them, there was a deity that I came across, like, just knowing about a deity, and it was an African Yoruba deity called Elegua, and Elegua is the spirit. They don't call them gods. They're like greater spirits. They're like spiritual beings that are more advanced than humans, in a sense, but there's still like this concept of like God or the creative force. But these deities, they're like an example for humans. Humans can learn from them. So this one deity, Elegua, he has the evil side to him, where it's like bad trickster, like evil trickster, or good trickster, like play a trick on you, but you learn something. Might not be pleasant, but in the long run, it's probably positive. Yeah. And he was depicted going around smoking a cigar and drinking rum. And this is kind of Afro-Cuban interpretation. And this is, and it was like, this was the kind of the legend that those that work with this spirit in that belief system, they will drink to channel one of those examples. They will drink, but you won't smell alcohol on them. So it's like, it doesn't occur. And I've had a couple of these instances where it was like, even though I was drinking and doing this channeling, it's like it didn't affect me. It felt like something, it was like this kind of spiritual fringe experience where it's like something is not quite as it appears. And I've had these. I work with, like I said, ayahuasca, which is very different from alcohol, but it's an altered state as well. So I think any substance, there are cacao, I can't say that word, cacao ceremonies, so that doesn't really have a psychoactive effect, but it has an effect on your body. So whatever it is that you ingest, like even, people drinking like holy water or blessed water or water from a healing stream, your relationship with that water is not the same as your relationship with the regular water, because there is something that you believe about it. So I think everything pretty much can be sacrament, but it's the problem starts occurring where you start using the sacrament and like using it, and that's the only way you can be okay with what you have going on. That's where addiction develops.
Right.
So yeah, there's a like fine line there.
Totally. I think there's like a huge difference between, I think it's your intention, you know, it's like even people use marijuana for like to like get stoned and forget about all their problems, or you can use it in a really like to open yourself up and to.
Oh yeah, and there's ceremonies with marijuana as well. There's like pretty much anything, but also pretty much everything. Like there's tantra, there is, you know, a spiritual side of sex, right? And like sexual work, like sex magic is a thing as well. But it's also like sex can be an addiction. You know, you can like anything really that does give you this heightened experience of life and be an addiction. Like even adrenaline can be an addiction. Like someone who's like jumping off of everything, like I need to do something crazy, you know, like all the time. So yeah, it's how you approach it, and when it becomes not so much sacred but something you need in order to access elements of yourself, I think that's when it's important to just kind of pay attention to that relationship.
I love that.
In my experience, at least.
Yeah. I could talk to you for another hour, but I have a client. I have a client in like 10 minutes. And I have to get ready. So, well, let me ask you one more thing. Tell us how we can find you on the internet and work with you and plug into all your stuff.
Okay, so my main presence is on Facebook. I love this platform just because I really like to write, and I write quite a bit, and it feels like a really good place for this kind of long form content. And I feel like I really can connect to people there. Like I see their name, we can be friends, I can follow their journeys. So Facebook is definitely like the top place to find me. It's Katerina Barrie on Facebook. I have like that little verified check mark just in case. So this is one place. Another place is Instagram. I don't use it as much, but it's also a good place to connect. And this is really like it. I run folds all on Facebook in like a private Facebook group, over Messenger. The mastermind site is on Voxer, but I kind of stay to these two platforms. So it's very easy. It's the same name, both Katerina Barrie. That's the little @ handle as well. And if you want to send me an email or ask a question, that's the better way for you. It's katerinabarrie@gmail.com. So very easy as well.
And for the people that want to join the folds, do we need to message you for the link, or is it in your social media?
I can. So yeah, so it's pinned to the top of my Facebook page right now. I can share the link with you if that's something you want to have, or like put somewhere. But basically, it's all over my social. So it's in my Instagram bio, it's on top of my Facebook page, and you can also just send me a message and I'll give you the link. It's all in one place. So there's like a little website so you can read more about it for sure.
This has been so much fun. I'm so bummed that I have to go. Like I want to.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm so grateful. This has been so amazing. I love you're an amazing host. This is like the best first podcast experience that I could ever hope for.
Thank you. We should do it again sometime.
Yes. Maybe I'll start a podcast and I'll interview you. I have questions for you though.
That would be awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, okay?
Thank you, you too. Bye.